me know, and we'll go ahead and get that off to you. I am actually going to turn the welcomes over to Jerica so that she can introduce our speakers for today, and we'll get going from there. I'm going to keep allowing people into our meeting here. So if Jerica, if you are there, if you can unmute yourself, and we will go ahead and get started. We do have everybody muted for right now. And then if you do have questions, you can throw those in the side chat bar, or you can unmute yourself at the end and ask your question. So Jerica, if you will take it away, that would be great.
I sure will. Well, thank you everybody for attending. I know that everything is so weird lately, but we're really excited to have you. Casper College is on the line. So Casper College is our presenting sponsor for today. So we have Darren Devine, and I'm pretty sure I saw Chris on, right? So thank you, Casper College, for providing this opportunity to our fellow chamber members. And then I wanted to introduce some of our panelists. We will probably have Drew Perkins logging on eventually. He's with the session getting ready to kick back in here in a couple days. These guys are extremely busy, so their time is very, very valuable. So we're so appreciative of everybody. So with us today, we've got Bill Landon and Charlie Scott, definitely. Drew Perkins is supposed to be logging on as soon as he's done with what he's got going on. And then Pat Sweeney, are you on?
He's on, Jerica. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And then possibly Joe McGuire. Has Joe logged in yet?
I don't see Joe.
Okay. So we do have, mostly for post-ledge, we've got the Senate side of our House representatives here. And the main focus of today is to kind of talk about everything that we missed, just because COVID-19 hit the same time we were wrapping up session, so all of the good work that was done really just kind of got buried, and so we really want to talk about those items in general. And then moving forward, I know these guys are working really, really hard on just what the future of Natrona County and Wyoming in general is looking like. So with that, we will turn everything over to Bill Landon.
Jerica, thank you. It's good to be here, and I really miss our opportunity to see each other in person. It's really one of the special days of the year, both the pre-legislative session, the post-legislative session. We always look forward to that because it's one of the few opportunities we get to see so many in the room at the same time and catch back up. You know, Jerica, so appreciate your communication and you pulling this together and giving us this opportunity. Looking back on the session, I thought this morning, wow, that seems like such a long, long time ago. And so much has happened since then. But it really was a pretty impactful session, and so many good things happened, I think. That I'm excited to hear from everyone else and want to share some of my perceptions of things. I want to thank Aaron as well and all the staff of the Chamber. Thank you to President Devine and Casper College for helping us to do this today. As I look back on the session, just a few things, folks. I was really proud that we touched on some policy issues that I think were really important. We addressed the vaping problem that we're seeing in our schools. We passed some mental health provisions for our first responders. We passed a lodging tax that I think was a step in the right direction in terms of broadening and changing our tax base in Wyoming. That does a number of things. First of all, it supports our number 2 industry, tourism, which I was very excited about. And then the second part of that is that particular tax will allow for about $30 million to be freed up in our general fund that can be used for other things, whether it be education or roads or health support, whatever. So that's some of the big things that I remember. As chairman of the corporation's elections and political subdivisions committee, I was really proud of the work that we did on that committee and some of the bills that were passed. One that you may have read about is large-scale solar, and that was Senate File 36, which brought solar power and the solar fields that you're going to start seeing more and more of. It brought it underneath the Industrial Siting Council. That's important because we want to make sure that those projects are fully vetted. That's very appropriate because the headline in today's paper actually deals with one of those projects underway in our very own county. Much of what we did in that bill, and I want to salute Senator Scott, who's on that committee and really helped with identifying what do we want to do with setbacks. And we pretty much handed over the restrictive part of what we want to do with solar fields to our local governments. And I was very pleased with that. So it'll be our county commissioners and our municipalities who will make the decisions regarding where those solar fields end up and how far away from things they need to be, et cetera. We talked about coal-fired plants a lot in this past session. That was really all about how do we extend the life of those coal-fired plants that have been the workhorses of our electrical grid for so long. There's still some value in those plants, in our opinion, and we're working on everything from potential nuclear power, which has some possibilities coming up in the next 5 to 10 years, perhaps replacing with that kind of a structure, and also transforming those over into natural gas. We think it's very important to our communities in Sweetwater County, over in Cameron, of course, just down the road in Glen Rock, for us to do everything we can for those coal-fired plants. I was really very proud to support an effort that we have undertaken over the last 3 sessions to try to get some help to our municipalities in terms of surface water, and was very pleased that we were able to get that through the state Senate in good fashion. We handed that over to Representative Sweeney. He did a great job of carrying that on the House side, and I think that is going to be very important to particularly our community, which is facing all sorts of infrastructure deterioration in how it hopes to deal with surface water and drainage problems. So that was really, I think, a big win for those of us in Natrona County. Just to wrap it up, Jerica and all, those are some of the bills that we dealt with and some of the things that I think we accomplished. I think looking forward to visiting today about looking forward and not just back at the session, but where do we go from here? We find ourselves in a pretty unique time. I really want to salute the chamber, and I know that all of you today on this call and those in the chamber will be working to support each other. There's a lot of frustrations out there, and particularly over the weekend, I heard from a lot of folks who I hope will be willing to change their mindset and be ready to help each other. We need to stay positive, and I know that we can come out of this and be in good shape going forward. I will leave it at that. And Jerica, I thank you for that opportunity. We have a lot of work to do coming up in the interim, and we'll be doing that. I'll be glad to talk about that if somebody has a question. So thank you.
Wonderful. And I missed somebody who's equally as important. Speaker of the House, Harshman, is also on today's call. So sorry about that. I can't see all the attendees, so my apologies. All right. Senator Scott, we're going to move to you, and I have a question for you right out the gates. Because you are a rancher and agriculture is kind of your way of life, is there anything happening right now that you can see from the Wyoming side that's going to help not only you, but everybody else in Wyoming who's struggling right now with agriculture?
Well, I could fall back on the old saw that there's nothing wrong with the Wyoming agriculture the good rain wouldn't cure. But we do have some problems in the marketing side where the federal government has forced concentration on large packing plants and used their regulatory authority to keep most of the small ones suppressed. The good thing that would come out of this, if anything good comes out of it, is that with the problems the large ones are having, maybe we can get those regulations loosened or get more state authority there so smaller local plants can compete. There's a classic problem with regulatory capture of the whole federal system by a few of the large packers. That would be the biggest thing. That would be agriculture in this state. You know, we work according to the weather and the seasons, and this is our busy season, and frankly, we haven't been much affected by the current virus problems. We're just going about our work, and it naturally keeps us fairly isolated. I would like to thank the Chamber for this opportunity. It's always useful to talk to y'all, and we're very appreciative that you host these things regular. Doing it remotely is going to be a new experience for all of us. And then before I get into the substance of this, I would like to say it is an election year, and I do fully intend to run for re-election. I think I've seen several of these downturns such as we're facing now, and I think that experience may be helpful. Bill covered a lot of the legislative things that I'd wanted to talk about. I would add just one thing on the solar. If you go down and look at the large-scale solar plant that is in the Rock Springs area, using the land for a big solar operation, and it takes a lot of land to provide much electricity, it precludes all other uses of that land. The solar panels just take up all the space, and nothing else can use the land. And one of the things that triggered the legislation we passed was the one that got built on top of a very valuable trona deposit that is handy to an existing mine and sooner or later likely to be mined. And that's much more valuable in some ways than the solar, but having a solar farm on top of it precludes the development of the mining of the trona, because that causes a subsidence that's inconsistent with running a solar farm. So the damages would be too high. So that was one of the siting problems we were trying to address, and I think successfully did in that Bill was talking about. And the coal-fired plants, the economics there are, we were trying to get them an opportunity to have a market. I think we did some of that, and they're all different. Like the one here, the Dave Johnson one, one of the possibilities is to sell the CO2 it produces as a byproduct to revive the Big Muddy oil field between here and Glen Rock. And you have to have a long-term source of the CO2 in order to do that. So there's a couple of benefits if we can succeed with that one. This last session was primarily a budget session, and it was a fairly difficult one because it was becoming apparent to a number of us that while we have large reserves that we set aside against the downturn, set it aside in the good years, we're going to have more downturn than we do reserves. Now, that was before the effect of the COVID and the virus effects on our economy are doing tremendous damage to all the state's revenue sources. So we probably have enough reserves to last out the 2-year period, the biennium we're just starting, but not go beyond that. And I think it's fairly clear that the downturns in our revenue are likely to go beyond that. So we're going to have to start doing some things to control those expenses. The Senate got a start on that. We were able to rein in the state's capital expenditures. That's a classic thing you do when your revenue goes down, because you don't, a lot of those things you don't have to have right away. So we wound up actually not passing state capital construction bill because we couldn't agree with the House as to how far to rein it in. But we made progress there. We did in the education area. There's a very complicated system there, but one of the things, the formula uses a smaller class size than I think any district in the state actually uses. And we wind up paying for a bunch of teachers who do not exist. Call them ghost teachers. And that creates a slush fund the districts can use for all kinds of things. And we were able to, there was an increase coming in that, we were able to cut that in half. I don't think we've gotten the job done there, but we were started to make some progress on it. But with what's coming at us because of the decline in revenue from COVID, I think you can almost pick your favorite state program and figure it's likely to take somewhere between a 10 and a 20% hit as we try to match our expenditures to our revenues. And that's going to be very unpleasant. We'll probably have to do some tax increases. I liked the one we passed this last time with the lodging tax, because the figures I saw are that 70 to 80% of it gets paid by people coming in from out of state. And I know when I travel out of state, there's always local lodging taxes one way or another that you pay, and you say, why don't we do that in Wyoming? So I'm tired of just paying the ones in the other states and us not getting the benefit we could have. So I thought that was a good one. Bill covered that very well. So we did some things in the health area. We're trying to control the costs. We're trying to improve in the corrections area, particularly where most of those people, when they come out of prison, need some kind of continuing substance abuse or mental health treatment. We're trying to get that improved, and that's an ongoing project. But that's sort of the sum of what I wanted to talk about.
Perfect. And then we did have a question submitted. Let me pull it up really quick here.
Okay.
And it's for really any of you that want to tackle this. Our state government clearly needs a more diverse set of revenue streams. What will you do given the current shortfall in funding to help the state have a broader set of funding sources?
Okay. Charles Scott, I'll take a crack at that one. We do and we don't. We've got a pretty diverse source, actually, but it's always helpful to get more diversity. We looked very seriously this last time at the possibility of buying what was left of the old Union Pacific land grant across the southern part of the state to diversify our economic holdings and improve the yield there. That came to grief. The governor vetoed the bill because there were too many restrictions put on it going through the legislature. I think he was planning to pursue it from the executive branch, which they could do as an investment, because that's what it is. But I suspect that that's probably going by the board. The combination of the virus and all the liquidity the Federal Reserve is pumping into the system, I suspect that the price of that will be ultimately too high, and we won't get in on that. That was an idea that I thought was very creative for improving our revenue. The one thing we should not do is a state income tax in any form. those have been proposed over the years. But what we've done is create with the permanent funds that the people of Wyoming voted in 1974. We've created an alternative revenue source there that generates roughly the kind of revenue that many states get off an income tax. And I think anybody that wants to add an income tax on top of that is either trying to shed some of their own tax burden or is trying to give us more government than we need. And so I think that's a very bad idea to diversify that way. And sometimes when you get that kind of a question, that's what they have in mind. That would be a bad idea.
Jerica, I might just jump in real quickly and add, really appreciate the words from the longtime senator from the western part of our county. I think that's obviously one of the most difficult things that we face going forward is how do we diversify our tax base? It's a very, very challenging set of issues. I think, as I said, I think the lodging tax was a great step in the right direction. As Senator Scott points out, much of that support that we get through that tax is going to come from somewhere else. The other day, our management council was meeting to discuss the impacts of the pandemic and what sorts of topics that we could consider and give out to our committees to go to work on during this interim. And some of the issues go to work in a hurry. And the idea of Medicaid expansion came up. That is an issue that frankly, I've never supported. I've never voted for Medicaid expansion. I just don't like some of the requirements from the federal government and the lack of any sort of assurance that the federal government isn't going to back out on us. But that's for another day. Still, I voted to send that topic to our revenue committee simply because I think during this time, we owe it to ourselves to literally look under every rock to see our way out and through and take a look at those numbers again. On the health front, that may be something that we would want to take another look at, given the revenue picture that Senator Scott just painted. We do have our hands full, and I think as soon as we get the pandemic taken care of, we've got a lot of work to do on the state budget and future revenues.
Pandemic-wise, oh, sorry, Charlie, go ahead.
I would add to that on the Medicaid expansion. I think Bill's right. There's real problems with that part of the Medicaid program. It's a very inefficient way to do things, very expensive in terms of what you get. If they're going to look at it seriously, they have to come up with a tax proposal to pay for it, because clearly we cannot. That would be quite expensive for us. That's thank God we haven't done it, or we'd have been in much greater financial trouble than we already are. So I continue to be a big skeptic on that thing. But if you're going to do it, you have to raise a tax to pay for it.
Perfect. And then, and this might be something for Harshman, but with a gross estimate, what do you guys think that the cost to Wyoming has been with this pandemic? Do you guys have numbers lined out on that?
Hi there. Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks. You know, I think I appreciate you having us today. I think the cost, you know, I've told every local government organization, everybody to keep good records, right? And the guidance from and of course the smallest part was to governments, but a lot of money is going to flow to healthcare providers, hospitals, and they're talking, of course, today's news of another stimulus bill. And so I think all that to be seen, but it's hard to tell. I think obviously the real cost is going to be to your members, you know, the economic, the lives that have been interrupted change forever. I just think it's immeasurable. I don't think this is any other downturn that anybody has ever seen in our history. It's not gonna. It's the Great Depression. We never even taxed anything. We never even had a sales tax. There was no loss of state revenues because there were none. And government has grown substantially since then. Most of our state government, frankly, is administering federal programs. And but I think what you're looking at just in this next, the downturn to the private sector is going to be enormous. And I think the price of oil, we've lost. Just 5 years ago, we mined 470 million tons. This current year, 2020, which started January 1st, of course, we're probably going to mine 180 million tons. So, that's $500 million right there in revenue just to the state. And then the jobs, about 1,000 mining jobs and railroad jobs now have disappeared. And through these ups and downs that Senator Scott has talked about, I grew up in Midwest Wyoming, oil patch. I know about ups and downs, my parents lived it. The thing about the ups and downs that we've had the last 40, 50 years, we've had this base of coal. And most states grow kind of at the price of durable goods and the sale of durable goods. It's 2-3% every year. And Wyoming had that with coal for a long time, 2-3% growth every year. Now we've lost $500 million of coal, and it's going down. And now we're kind of a one-trick pony with oil. And as you know, in Casper, goodness gracious, we're a little more diversified, but there's going to be nobody unscathed, and it's going to affect every institution we have. And particularly, I'm most concerned just about population. And I think we're looking at this fiscal year that's going to start July 1st, probably about an $850 million shortfall to state government and local government. And that's about 40%. And it's not 20%. And I think it's going to be, and most of that, 70% of that's in the general fund. The next year, 2022, it's going to hit. We're going to see property taxes because we fund our schools with property taxes like every other state. The problem in Wyoming is the only one paying property taxes are mineral companies, oil companies now. And it's based 100% on the price of oil. We have the lowest personal property tax. Ag doesn't pay any taxes. So once you're going to see that then shift to a 60-40 thing in the coming years, and that deficit will grow to $1 billion. I think President Perkins said it probably best. There's really 3 types of taxes. And I don't even want to talk taxes because everybody's in shock. We got to get off our backs and somewhat get on our feet. And so I think those things will come. And I think we do have a little savings will get us through about the next 12 months. There'll be cuts, there'll be all that. But, to cut $800 million out of a $3 billion a year budget with K-12 and general fund, $600 million of that general fund, it's divided about equally. But like I say, 40%, and then that'll grow to about $1 billion in the following year, unless the price of oil rebounds dramatically. And so I think it's going to be like something we've never seen. But I think we're going to have those tough conversations. I think you're going to have to dust off Tax 2000. You're going to, President Perkins said it the other day on a meeting I was at. He said there's really only 3 types of taxes. You got sales tax, property tax, and income tax. And of course, we're a tax. None of us like an income tax. None of us like any taxes, but we have the lowest personal property tax in the United States. We've become a tax haven, right? We have tax refugees who flooded Teton County, billionaires. We're buying up massive swaths of property. And I think the thing that I worry for Wyoming, right? Kid that was born at Wyoming, it was Natrona County Memorial. I think the thing I worry about is that we continue this and we're going to attract kind of what we're attracting, and we're attracting tax refugees. They still register their airplanes in Montana, just like some people register motorhomes in Montana. It's cheaper. But I think there's going to have to be a reform. You know, we tax personal property. Probably shouldn't do that. Should tax real property, those kind of things. And I think your involvement in that is going to be so important in how we do this. But if not, I think you get into a level where, you know, you just divide $1 billion by 80,000. I mean, that's the average employee, state employee with benefits. You know, some 50,000 plus some benefits. It's half the workforce. I think if you're saying we're going to cut like that, you're really going to have to get into the Department of Health. Probably going to have to end the Medicaid program. You're going to have to end behavioral health. It's $100 million a year. You're going to have to end all state support for community colleges. $100 million a year to try to get to that $800 million deficit level to fill that hole. And, you know, and that's just going to get you part of the way. You're going to have to end the caps on FMRs and severance tax. And, you know, I don't think people are going to go for getting behavioral health cut and still have water projects fully funded. So all those things, I think people, but I say this to you on a private Zoom call. I think people are still in shock, and this isn't the time for that. But that's what keeps me awake at night. And so I think we got to get through this first things first, get this aid out to our people, have this short legislative session, get some of these federal dollars flowing to our communities. And then we'll start working on the rest of it. And then we just got to hang together, because it's going to be tough in every sector.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Speaker Harshman. Go ahead.
But it's going to be tough, and we just got to hang together.
Absolutely.
Jerica, just a quick addition to, and really appreciate the Speaker of the House and everything that he's been doing. He's put in hours that I don't think he ever dreamed he was going to be putting in, as have the rest of the management team. But I just wanted all of our folks on the call today to know that we are very much listening. We're getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails right now. And you ask about the impact. I agree with the speaker. I don't think that we have our arms around the depth of the impact, but we do know that it has impacted just about everything that we do. I've had visits with folks from David Street Station and Mercer House and the community of Evansville and our hospitals and so many facets of our economy. We know that it's impacted everyone. And I think I agree with the speaker in saying that I think the first things first is that we need to get this federal stimulus money through the legislature, through the executive branch, and out onto the street to our people. My biggest fear is that Friday and Saturday, that we don't get our work done in Cheyenne and get that legislation passed so the governor can do his work to get it to our people. I think that's first things first, and then, as I said before, then we can turn our attention to budget and revenue and where do we go from here.
Yeah, I think if I could just Senator Landon is part of Management Council. So you're starting to see this movement around the state through some members of our body, several senators, few House members might not vote for to adopt rules for the special session. They're similar to our budget process with mirror bills. And we're obviously watching that. And I think, you know, you go back in our history of the Great Depression, we had a special session, went down there, the legislature couldn't agree and adjourned. And even if we have a Zoom process, just like this meeting, it's not perfect. It's not like being in the hangar where we can all see. But even an imperfect legislative Zoom process is going to be way better than having the governor now be king and he can just roll out money, him and his 5 advisors, however they want it. And I think what Senator said, There's 90 of us. I've had 10 emails today from people around the state, different nonprofits, different ideas, and you multiply 10 of those times 90 of us, right? There's hundreds of people contacting us every day. And so my concern is, and I think it's, if you guys could help us, email your senators and representatives. I think it's time for leadership now, and to go down and, people are saying, well, this government money's got to go to private industry only, not grow the government. I mean, it's not even the point. But I just don't even. So it's going to be really important that we lead and get this going first things first. And I count numbers in this job, and I'm a little concerned in the Senate, frankly. And they've got to have 20 votes to adopt these rules, which again we've used in every special session since '81, and we continually do with every budget. We do a mirror budget process, same rules. And but there's this little thing going on out there around the state. So if you can email your senators, your representatives, and say, hey, we really wish you well, support you. Please adopt the rules, vote for the bills. I mean, it's not about tacking on a bunch of amendments to these bills and making them Christmas trees. It's about getting the money out on the street of Casper to our hospital and healthcare providers and nonprofits and so on. So we really need your help. The next 48 hours, I think, will be really important. So thank you.
Yeah. Then we do hear, and again, this question is really for any of you, but we hear that Wyoming is probably paced pretty well as far as the recovery process goes. Do you guys think that there's some truth to that, or is it just positive Wyoming?
I don't want to, and I'll quit talking because there's other people here, but I will say, it's hard to say. I mean, I think we've weathered this better than anybody for whatever reason. This pandemic started on the coast and we were the last to get it. Now, I talked to a nurse yesterday at Rapid City that had 20 positive cases in the hospital yesterday, the biggest spike. So I hope that's not, something that it's finally getting to us. But I think I think you just saw the governor, we're going to open up the national parks. We want to open the state for visitation. I think, as you guys have said, I think all the research, people want to go rural and wide open spaces, probably drive there. Glenn, that doesn't do much for our airport, but so we got to get that process going. But you're right. I think the positivity, and I think the legislative process, we're way ahead of every state. There's no states have done this. We'll be the first to get this money out. We're the first to talk about first things first and second things second. And I've been on a call with all the speakers across the United States. We're way out in front, and most of them are still squawking. And they're full-time legislators. They're squawking about everybody trying to fill their own pockets, like you see on TV. So we need to just get out there and get to work, and then come back home and keep working for you guys, and then do whatever we can to get back on our feet and heal up and get moving. So appreciate you.
Eric,
right.
Senator Scott, it looked like Senator Scott would like to chime in.
Yeah.
Please do.
I just wanted to say, I think that our leadership has done a very good job with the first wave of this COVID. But from what I'm seeing, people are getting pretty lax about some of the social distancing things. And I think there's a real risk of, if that continues, a second wave that will be a lot more serious than the first one we had. So I just want to put that note of caution in there, that we aren't out of the woods on this one yet at all. And then when it's appropriate, I'd like to question on there is a problem with the proposed rules for the special session, very different from anything I've ever seen before.
Just a quick addition, Jerica, because I think this really cuts to a very important issue that we wanted to all touch on today. And I think I've had several things on my mind, just like everyone else. And one I shared the other day that made it into one of the mediums, and that was just simply my concern that that people take care of each other out there. We've had incidents across the country where mandates have been put in place. We've had workers of businesses who have tried to request of patrons that they adhere to whatever the health officer wants, and we've had people shot in McDonald's, terrible issues like that. And so so we brought that up at Management Council to simply say, if we're going to have things in place, what are the expectations in terms of what do our first responders do in circumstances like that? And so I just hope that everyone can stay positive as we work our way through this and out of it, and take care of each other out there. That's one of my biggest concerns going forward.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. My husband is in law enforcement, just got back from overseas, and it's a whole different world for all of them right now. So yeah, we definitely appreciate the lookout on that. All right, Representative Sweeney, we would love for you to weigh in on everything that's on your mind.
Everything? I mean,
Everything.
Well, first off, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I think I'm on revenue, so I have some differing opinions from a couple of folks on revenue issues. And I'm also on labor health with good Chairman Scott. And then I'm also on the select committee on tribal relations. And I think on that point, I was very pleased that the committee, the body was able to see and pass the missing and murdered Indigenous persons bill to help with tribal relations and start having better accountability on that. It's a real problem, and I'm an alternate on that committee. It's been a real steep learning curve, and but they're part of our community, and they're part of our state. A couple of other bills that did pass. I think both Senator Landon and Senator Scott talked about the low carbon energy standards and sequestration, and working with Rocky Mountain Power and Pacific Corp before they retire Dave Johnson down the line. We're really pushing, and we've got legislation in place, thankfully, to leadership on selling those plants if they're not serious about trying some other possibilities. You're not hearing Black Hills Energy, the other coal-fired power plants that are not controlled by Rocky Mountain Power or owned by them, on changing out and leaving coal. So I think it's just trying to work with, they've been great neighbors, great job providers to our economy, but keeping those communications, and that bill provided and continued on with that. And then I'll leave it with the local sales and use tax. That was a negotiation that came out of the Revenue Committee. that allowed between the counties and the towns in order to, if your say 5th cent or 6th cent either goes through or doesn't go through, the vehicle to be able to go back to the voters. It's all with the voters for that an additional quarter cent up to 1 cent. Senator Landon mentioned the surface water. I truly appreciate his leadership. And then that came out of corporations with, on the Senate side, and we were able to hear that in revenue on the House side. And because of the leadership of the Speaker, we were able to finally get that put out there for all of our 99 municipalities across the state. Let me shift gears to, first off, the Occidental purchase of, as Charlie put it. I am hopeful that it possibly could still be on the table for review. I take an opposite look. I think it could be a heck of a buy at this point in time and provide long-term stable revenues to the state. I think we can do a good job of managing those lands in the state, and there are vast resources under the ground in a lot of those spots, including some of the world's largest reserves of soda ash. So I'm still hopeful on that one. Don't know where it's at, but still hopeful. On the Medicaid expansion, I did was and still am in favor of looking at that. The numbers that we heard, again, that came through revenue, and the numbers we heard, it was be about $9 million to the state to put about. Remember, the state currently would be on the hook for 10% in of the dollars. 90% currently comes from the feds, and one of the things that we had built into that bill that was not approved was that the governor, we wanted some safeguards in there that if that 134 million from the feds reduced to say 80% or 70%, that we would have an opt-out easily. But then we also brought forward a bill for a constitutional amendment which required a vote of the people to see what the people of Wyoming wanted. And again, that failed. So I believe in these trying times, there is support for us to look at this, and I am hopeful that on this, the second session, that we might look at that. It is an interim topic again, and I am hopeful that some of the CARES Act money may apply, and so that might be the revenue stream. I also on corporations, or on revenue, we will, as an interim topic, be looking at the corporate tax. not personal income tax. And we have had great resistance from some of the very large box stores. We have 2 of them here in town. I think there's 11 or 13 across the state. And just remind folks that 48 states have some sort of a corporate slash, not personal, but corporate tax, and the other tax escapes me, but and we're not after our corporations or LLCs. So we will hopefully during the interim, and that will be for next session. That's not something that we're going to be dealing with on the first come first, second come second, third come third, how many ever sessions, special sessions we end up with. And lastly, it came up about the amendments and trying to get through the rules. This first session, I've listened in on all the management council meetings and the meetings online with minerals on the 4th bill that'll come through on the first comes first. I believe we're heading in the right direction. And to let, there is not, the problem is with the fundamental thinkers, and I don't disagree on, you know, we've got to deal with the national debt. I don't disagree with that, but not right now. This is an unprecedented problem across our country and its global dynamics. And I just want to say, if you want to know some names to contact, I'll be glad to give them to you. We have one representative here in town that needs some urging, and nothing is more important in my mind on getting this first things first, these 4 bills through in the allotted time. And that's how we're going to get money into our small businesses that you represent, and our nonprofits, our hospitals, as Speaker Harshman pointed out. And it's important, incredibly important, that we get this done so that the governor can go to work with our help in the legislative branch and the help of the judicial branch in getting that done. There's time to squabble on second things second and third things third. And that time will come. Now's not the time to squabble. So with that, I appreciate the time. Thanks for sending the sandwich. I hope you sent one to Charlie. So.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Representative Sweeney. All right. So now's the time for questions. So feel free. You can either click on the raise your hand button, pop something in the chat, or if there's a dead silence, you can go ahead and chime in if you have questions. Let's see. A second here. Amber, are you playing with your computer? Okay.
Yeah, I am. Sorry.
All right. I think That is it. Thank you guys again so much for everything that you do. Speaker Harshman, Senator Landon, Senator Scott, Representative Sweeney. We know how crazy everything is for you right now. And like we said earlier, we really do appreciate you taking your time out of your day to tell us what's going on. We really do just appreciate everything about you. I did post your emails in the chat. So if any of you guys want to reach out, those emails are there. We also have the full list on the Chamber's website, and we can post those out later as well. So please get a hold of your representatives if you have anything you need for them to do for you when they go into session.
And also, again, thank you. Thank you to all of you that joined today. Hopefully we can all be back in when we do our pre-ledge and we can actually be together to have that meeting. But this is a good alternative. It was nice to see each of you. And thank you again so much. And hopefully we'll see each other again soon in person, whatever that looks like.
And Aaron, Pat Sweeney, thanks again. And I have committed to running again. I just feel so strongly. I've got lots to learn, but I just think a new person coming in, if I do have an opponent, that it's going to be very difficult. I don't have all the answers, and you know, I look to people like Charlie Scott and Harshman and Landon and the folks that have been around, and I think we all do for that kind of leadership we've got.
I agree, and I feel like Casper and Natrona County, we are very blessed with all of our representatives that we have. I feel like each of you are reachable, and you are more than happy to talk to us. And when we run into you on a Saturday morning at Grant Street getting coffee, we know that you will take a few minutes to listen, and for that I am very, very grateful and very appreciative. So again, thank you to all of you. If anybody does want a copy of this, just go ahead and shoot one of us an email and we can get that off to you. And in the meantime, stay healthy, and as we keep hearing, wash your hands.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
much. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.